Hello, Ronan, and welcome to Green Sense.
Hello, Sarah. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We're so excited to have you here and to hear all about Superfy and what you're doing for the environment. Our listeners, some of them are in Dublin 15 and others can be found globally. We've listeners from all over the world once we put this up on Spotify. So it's going to be exciting to see who is interested in this particular one. So we are going to be talking today all about your business Superfy and the technology. I guess you're in the climate tech sphere. So tell us how this all came about. How did you tell us about yourself and how you came to start Superfy?
Sure. Well, my name is Ronan Quinlan. I'm Dublin born and bred. And I always had an interest in technology. So when it came to finishing up in university in 1997, I also wanted to travel and explore the world. So I actually got lucky and got on a thing called a FOSS Far East Asian graduate program, where I got a work opportunity with a Taiwanese electronics business at the age of 21, moved out there and spent the next 15 years out there in Taiwan. So I really ended up in the sales and marketing roles initially with different electronics businesses. And eventually in 2003, I met another Irish guy and we founded a successful global business in the antennas and wireless engineering space called Glass. And we did that for the next 18 years, developing from a two-person company into a company with over 450 employees, 10 locations around the world, and worked with the world's biggest brands like Google, Apple, and so on. And I did that until this year. Mm-hmm. And I finished up at Glass now and have spun out part of this business from Glass, which was around smart waste and recycling management, and rebranded it with a new agenda, which also focuses very much on sustainability, called Superfy. So this is my second go of the entrepreneurial ventures. And it's really an exciting time. So we're Superfy. What's Superfy about? Well, Superfy, we're really developing efficient and sustainable software to allow operators of collection schemes for batteries, for glass, for clothes, to improve the way they collect the materials, but also make it more convenient for consumers, because we have sensors that we put in the bins which allow for automatic detection of when the bins are getting full, and only then do the drivers and the vehicles need to go out and collect those materials. It also means we democratize the collection of those materials, so they can be put in any type of container, and much more easy for consumers to put their used materials there, and there's traceability. So that's what Superfy is about. Ultimately it's about increasing recycling rates worldwide using the latest technology.
Wow, yeah, which is no mean feat, right? Because recycling and certainly on the consumer level is very difficult, because sure, nobody knows what goes in their recycling bins, or they think they do, but perhaps the consumer, it's quite difficult at that level.
And where does it go, right? So they know they're putting it in there and they're doing the job, but where does it go? So we're really trying to develop a platform that can track that material from this idea of not cradle to grave, which probably what people think happens now. It goes in the recycling stream. Some of it get reused, some of it ends up in incineration or landfill, some of it ends up in other countries, and we don't know what happens to it. So we're trying to develop a platform that can track that material into remanufacturing and into a true circular economy solution. And it's a big task, because there are elements of all of those already in existence, but there's very few businesses trying to develop the whole platform. But that's our ultimate goal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So the overarching purpose of the company then is to help with recycling, or to be for circular economy?
Yeah, it's basically a software platform that if you're a collector of batteries, for example, in Australia, the largest collector of batteries under a government compliance scheme called EcoBat uses our sensors in their battery bins and our software to route the vehicles to collect them. Australia is a vast continent, and they have already 4,000 of these smart bins out there powered by our technology. And so they have a fleet of over 100 vehicles, but they may have needed 200 or 300 using traditional methods, where you'd be driving along trying to figure out, is that bin full or not? Now, when it gets to 70-80% full, it sends an alert, and that day's route will be calculated most efficiently for the driver to pick up. Also, it reports on the individual stores' contributions and where the hotspots are and how many more collection points are needed. So it's really using technology to improve the way things are done. And yeah, there's a plan to roll out another 8,000 more units of that in Australia. So the way we do things in every country, it's different in this world. Every country has different focuses, but we plan to, use this technology in Ireland, in Canada as well, in the UK, to make things more transparent as well, and really scale up the deployment of these solutions. One of the big problems in recycling is the mixed recycling. So that's why you don't see too many recycling bins on the streets of Dublin, for example, because they've tried that before and everything gets put in them. If different materials are put in the bins, we have contamination. We have a problem with trying to sort that out at the recycling facility. So the way forward, in our opinion, will be separation of collection. So we have that to a certain extent at the bring centres in Ireland, but there's only 66, I think 60 plus of those in Ireland. It's not convenient for lots of people that don't access the transport to get there. If we can separate out those collection points into the Aldis, the Tesco's, your local Spar, and allow for convenient collection, that's the way forward, like what they've done in Australia. So we hope we can adopt these systems in Ireland.
Yeah, because you do. I mean, obviously, we do have the bring centres when it comes to, like you said, the wee collection of kind of electric stuff, anything with a plug, and then we also have a couple of the clothing bins as well. But I definitely see that if we could have separate textile collection, even if it was once a month or something, from either from your house or from every supermarket, that it would be so much easier.
It's being more proactive. I think sometimes we kind of used to doing things a certain way in every society, but it's opening organizations, people's eyes. There are the technologies there to be more proactive in terms of how we do things, and they're quite simple. Again, a good example in Australia is they have a soft film recycling program. So by that they mean the plastic bags and the soft film of the packaging. That's a notorious difficult thing to recycle, because it clogs up the recycling process. So if you can separate that at source, and that's what they're doing as well in Australia, and again, very, very advanced in their thinking in that regard. So our ability to work in different markets can allow us to bring new solutions in other areas that perhaps people didn't think about, But ultimately, it's just about sensing, about monitoring and reporting, and our software, because it's based on the Internet of Things, always on, connected to the internet, so it can give real-time reporting on what's going on. That's lacking in today's world. So how do we trust the data? So we can trust the data when we're monitoring and we're measuring.
Exactly. Well, that comes back to, I suppose, anybody's carbon footprint or measuring anything. You can't go forwards unless you know where the baseline is and you know what you're collecting in the first place, how often.
Exactly. And we have tracking sensors in the vehicles, so we connect up the vehicles as well, so we know exactly what fuel, what type of vehicle is it a heavy user of diesel, what the carbon emission impact is on that. And of course, we know the material as well being recycled. We can do a carbon emission calculation on that if it's being recycled or if it's going to landfill. So offering, true data, because today's systems tend to rely on a spend metric, which is, oh, I've spent this amount on fuel, or I've spent this amount on travel, or I've spent this amount on, and that is not entirely accurate. That's an accounting view of the world. Or what you really want to know is what is really going on. And that's the beauty of what we're bringing in here, albeit in one sector in particular.
Yeah, so you're sort of the eyes on the product, as it were, or the eyes on what's actually being
what's really going on in the field,
Yeah, exactly. So because I presume if somebody accidentally puts something into a bin that has a whole load of batteries in, that's not really going to work for the guys that obviously make the money.
Yeah, well, they basically, which is what they have to do today, they have to bring that back and they have to sort it, and that can cause issues. And basically the way the recycling industry works, if we want to encourage recycling as a profitable enterprise, one that more companies want to enter and actually deliver solutions on, it has to be profitable. And it's profitable based on the purity of the material stream that it collects. So really improving purity of the materials coming in. So the next advances will be cameras, and we'll be watching you, whether that's good or bad. But the cameras will, well, we won't be, the cameras will, and you can call it an AI system. So it will be looking down into the bin and able to clarify whether that there's contamination in the bin. And this is where the world is going, and it's already being used on the waste trucks, but not so much in the bins itself. And that's a pity, because once it enters the bin and it goes into the waste truck, that whole batch of materials in the waste truck is contaminated. So it's avoiding those contamination events. We're excited about where this can go.
I just have visions of somebody putting in their disposable coffee cup into the wrong bin, and then your software throws it out again and says, no, this is not where it belongs.
Yes, indeed. The latest bins are actually cameras on the outside, so they will be you could present the materials to the bin, and the bin will open to accept your product. Say, yeah, okay, that's compliant, please put it in here. And in mainland Europe, where they're more used to these type of systems, where they also tend to have ID systems we don't like in the UK or Ireland, where they actually connect it to the resident. So if you're paying your residential fees for waste and recycling, you get a card, and that bin only opens when you present your card, RFID card, to it, and then you put your material in. But that is again a different approach depending on what we want to do in each society. But we can make simple changes first.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's so interesting. It's like, somebody puts a skip up in the road, and then, the skip is full overnight, not with their stuff, but with everybody else's who's gone, oh, there's a skip. Excellent. I'm just going to throw all the stuff in.
Waste service.
It's
a waste neighborhood service, but where does it end up? It ends up mostly in incineration,
Yeah. No, and that's the really bad part of this, is that they talk about recycling as the seventh resource, and certainly from electronics and things like that, we're going to have to stop mining. We're going to have to start looking at what we've got existing and be able to go back and the batteries, all of that kind of stuff, and reusing what we have as insofar as is possible, because obviously aluminium still needs a little bit of new aluminium in it every time, but it's infinitely recyclable. So we definitely need to be working with that even more. So just kind of maybe clarify a little bit for me, like how the company reduces emissions. Like I have an overarching view, I suppose, but so, give me an idea.
Really, it's back to the increasing recycling rates. So if you're reusing that product rather than creating new products, that is the key. So EU has actually quite strict targets up to 2029 for increasing recycling rates of all materials, cardboard, glass, batteries, and so on. And it's a directive. It's by law. Each country has to do this, or they face heavy fines to do it. The easy wins may have been achieved already in terms of improving the recycling rate. So I think really using the technology to track what's going on and to show these rates are real and that they're improving is the way forward, because the current systems are a bit ad hoc. They kind of work based on, well, I've passed this material over to the recycler. In the UK, for example, they give a certificate saying I have taken the fridges, but after that, I believe there isn't much tracking as to what happens to the fridges. So really, that's the key for reducing carbon emissions. Is our technology allows a digital approach, efficient approach. You cannot manage to increase in recycling rates unless you use these tracking systems at a large to track what's going on in real time. Apart from that, a practical example would be, as we mentioned, the routing. It's all great if you're collecting materials. We've got 100 diesel trucks on the road. That's no good. Can we change them to electric vehicles? Fine, but even so, there's costs of that electricity. If we can reduce the amount of needless trucks on the road, as we complain about that in Dublin. We've got these trucks going up and down our road every day. We can reduce that to only collect when they need to collect. And in fact, that would reduce a lot of the transport fuels needed and the amount of vehicles needed on the road. And then finally, I think it's back to that reporting. If we can report what's really going on, then we can fix the issues. But if some of these items are not really being tracked and by the systems today, then how can we improve on the carbon emission reduction? So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's such an intelligent system. I mean, so simple actually, but clever at the same time. And it kind of needs a few little things to work with each other. The camera talking to the software, talking to the hub to say, okay, this bin is not full yet, so don't come and collect me. You don't have to come every Monday. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's just clever. It's like, okay, yeah. If
you ask any waste hauler today how they work based on these manifests. So it's a kind of paper-based printout given to the driver. Well, there can be apps as well, but realistically, it's a weekly route, which is really wasteful in this day and age. It's a kind of Victorian concept.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we certainly don't. I mean, not unsurprisingly, my black bin is very rarely full, and yet they come, once every 2 weeks for it.
Yeah, because the incentive there is some of them some collectors get paid by pickup. So, and yes, there is a weight element, but there's also a kind of an element of, well, it's just convenient. But if we change our minds to, let the system tell us when it needs to be picked up, that's far more efficient. I mean, you can still use an app to send a message to the collector, say, well, actually pick me up now, so it's be inconvenient. You can work around people's schedules.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely an element there of a possibility. Well, maybe you tell me what you think the future is for Superfy and the technology there. But I think there are so many applications, it must be almost mind-blowing for you guys what to do next.
Well, I think there is an underlying huge trend in obviously electrification, and batteries are a big part of that. And I think we're going to have to keep following the consequences of that alone is huge, because all those electric vehicles are going to create a massive mountain of batteries in the next 10 years, like literally millions of tons of batteries. So what's going to happen to them? So we want to be able to track them. They're already bringing in QR codes onto the individual cells of the batteries, but it's a closed system today. Those manufacturers of those vehicles don't really don't really want people knowing what's going on inside there because they're a bit worried about people reusing them wrongly and so on. So how do we democratize that again? Reuse those batteries, make sure they don't end up in landfill, make sure they're reused but reused safely. So that's just one sector, and I think the future will be cradle to cradle traceability. Let's make sure that they're being reused and reused safely, and bring in systems that are transparent and open to citizens and government as well. So it's not a case of Tesla just takes Tesla batteries and figures it out. Toyota just which is kind of what happens today. And how do we get an insight into what's really going on and an influence on that? So it's a nascent issue, but it will become a huge issue in the next 5 years as those batteries start to degrade. And approximately once they get to about 80% charge level, they're no longer suitable for vehicles, but they're perfectly suitable for off-grid battery storage solutions. And how do we use them safely? So that's just one example. But we may also look at entering into using our software and sensors into the water management as well, and energy management, because there are similar issues facing the world, and our technologies can be used to track what's going on and to for example, with water monitoring solutions, you can put a sensor in that pipe of the hotel or the building, know what your water consumption is like, and take action, rather than waiting for Irish Water to your water bills to tell you there's a problem, and you get control. So really, our future is enabling the people actually generating the carbon emissions to take control of their own resources, whereas before it's subcontracted out.
Yeah.
You're hoping that the subcontractors or the contractors are doing a good job, but with technology now, you should know yourself what your influence on the environment is, whether that's waste, recycling, water, or energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the first step that everybody should take is to make sure that they know what their impact on the world is. And you mentioned there about the car manufacturers not necessarily working together so much at the moment, unlike, let's just say, wrap in the UK with the supermarkets and the issue of the plastic. You've got Tesco's and you've got Sainsbury's and whoever else working together to try and solve the issue of the plastics. And now obviously they're all going to these bio-based films. Meanwhile, the recycling is still based on, it's a plastic film, and everybody needs to talk to everybody else, because otherwise we're going to be developing these. It's a bit like the great company down in Cork that have these bio-based plastics that you can use for, I think it's salads and things like that. But of course, people put that in the recycling bin and not the brown bin, because they think that it's plastic, but it isn't going to degrade in the way, and that's also not going to be recyclable. So I foresee that whole thing of having a picture of your bin is that it gives the guys picking up the bins an idea of how compliant these people are, or how they understand what goes in the right bin. And so it might
be as simple as a QR code in every piece of packaging. You present, when the packaging is done, you present, you're finished with it, you present the QR code to the scanner, and it will tell you which bin to put it in, or open up. So it's those type of simple fixes in some ways that just need, they actually need the governments and the EU to really mandate it, because no single company can create a general standard, So they're doing that for the battery cells, so so that you will be able to track what's going on in there in the future. But there needs to be an overarching, like a blockchain ledger, which allows for full transparency, and so it's not, you're not gaming the system. No, we've a way to go just yet for that. So in the meantime, you have to work in with all these different countries and companies, and their different systems and things. So this podcast, as you know, is all about climate action, and it's for business and the community. So what are your top 3 tips for people and businesses taking climate action? Well, I think number one will be, do you know your own contributions to the carbon emissions, as I mentioned earlier? Do you know yourself, your own office, or your own facility, or yourself, how much waste you're generating, how much recycling you're doing, and just tracking that and putting a benchmark against that. That's from our own industry. I think number two is, I think you do have to have a realization that we need to encourage, green energy. So, let's not block, green energy projects. That are key to the future. And number three, I think, is just bringing our children on that journey, because children today live in a pretty materialistic world. Great, they get the benefits of advanced, first world society, and yes, there's Greta Thunberg and so on, but how do we encourage a kind of realistic measures to combat the carbon emissions? So is that taking the bus, or is that walking? Basically.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not getting picked up.
I see it from my own kids. They live a good life, and fair play, but and it's up to us, the adults, to talk about these things with them.
Yeah, and teach them more responsibility. And yes, the bus is a great option, and it gets you from A to B independently of your parents. Yeah, so thank you very much for that. Those three pointers are brilliant, and I really enjoyed our chat today. I learned a lot about Superfy, and just how climate tech, like companies like yourselves, are really giving hope to the rest of us that these problems can be solved. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.